Breaking tonight, over 300,000 Britons have flooded the streets in the largest uprising of modern times. 15,000 social homes once promised to veterans and pensioners were cleared overnight, replaced by resettlement zones for migrants. And at the centre of the storm stands Prime Minister Keir Starmer, accused of pocketing kickbacks from a £1.8 billion phase of hotel and construction contracts. Investigators say it's part of a £2.4 billion corruption network. As fury exploded across Westminster, police were forced to escort him from Parliament under a barrage of bottles, chants and rage. This is no longer politics. This is collapse. And tonight, Britain has finally had enough. It didn't begin in Downing Street. It began 2 years ago. In 2023, before Starmer took power, the Home Office launched the Emergency Migrant Housing Plan, a project sold to the public as an act of compassion. But behind that slogan was a business pipeline. 5 private contractors were handpicked, all with ties to Labour-linked donors. One company stood out, Westbridge Contracts Limited. They donated £2.7 million to Starmer's 2024 campaign. Weeks later, they were rewarded with exclusive hotel and housing contracts worth over $620 million, the opening phase of what's now a $2.4 billion national housing network under criminal review. More than 15,000 social homes for veterans and pensioners were cleared to make way for migrant resettlement zones. This wasn't policy, it was preparation, a financial machine disguised as mercy. And when the ink dried on those contracts, Britain's integrity went with it. Then came the leak, the point of no return. 217 pages of Home Office files stamped confidential, PM clearance required. They landed in newsroom inboxes across the country. Inside were bank transfers, referral fees, and encrypted memos, all pointing back to Westbridge contracts. As those files spread across social media, the headlines turned into heartbreak. The anger left the pages and took to the streets. By dawn, Britain looked like a nation betrayed. From Manchester to Birmingham, veterans and pensioners stood outside the homes they no longer owned. Doors locked, names erased from housing lists. Some clutched medals. Others held eviction letters stamped reallocation order. Among them was Thomas Reid, a 67-year-old Falklands veteran who lost his left leg defending the Union Jack in 1982. "I gave my leg for this country," he told reporters. "And now I sleep in my car outside the home they took from me." Local councils confirmed the truth. More than 15,000 social homes have been cleared since the programme began. Entire blocks flattened within weeks, replaced by resettlement zones guarded by private security. Meanwhile, 42 luxury hotels across southern England now house over 32,000 asylum seekers, fully funded by taxpayers. Inside, breakfast buffets and spa services. Outside, pensioners sleeping in cars. The same nation that once built victory from rubble now leaves its heroes on the pavement. Every banner carried by protesters isn't just anger, it's loss. Every chant isn't just noise, it's a warning. Britain's compassion has been sold to the highest bidder. And as dusk fell over Westminster, one question echoed through the crowd. How much more will they take before the country takes it back? By nightfall, Downing Street was surrounded. Police in riot gear formed lines that trembled under the pressure of hundreds of thousands shouting, "Resign." Red flares lit the sky. Sirens screamed through the capital. In London, protesters scaled the gates of Whitehall. In Manchester, banners read, "Homes for Britain, not for deals." Across Leeds and Bristol, candlelight vigils turned into marches. Coins, papers, and fury filled the air. Over 480 arrests were made nationwide, but the chants only grew louder, unified, rhythmic, defiant. Inside number 10, aides pulled the blinds as the chants shook the walls. The crowd wasn't asking anymore, it was demanding. What began as protest had become a reckoning. And when the gates of Downing Street finally buckled, Britain crossed a line it cannot step back from. Even as chaos spread, the government's instinct wasn't to confess. It was to conceal. That night, the Home Office issued a data security directive, ordering staff to erase all files linked to Westbridge. Servers went dark, hard drives were pulled. At 2 a.m, over 11,000 records vanished in just 4 minutes. A whistleblower captured screenshots before they disappeared. By dawn, Downing Street blamed foreign interference. But digital forensics proved the data wipe came from inside Number 10 itself. In Parliament, opposition MPs demanded an inquiry. Starmer's allies stalled, citing national security matters. Behind closed doors, lawyers drafted denials. One leaked message from a senior advisor read, "If we go down, we take the Home Office with us." The cover-up wasn't protection, it was confession by deletion. And as more evidence vanished, the protests swelled again, proof that no firewall can contain betrayal. When power feels cornered, it reaches for control. Within 48 hours, the government imposed emergency orders expanding police powers to restrict gatherings. Curfews hit London, Leeds and Birmingham. Posts mentioning Downing Street were flagged as potential unrest. Police raided homes of protest organisers before dawn. Dozens of veterans were detained under the Public Order Act, accused of inciting instability. Among them was Thomas Reid, dragged from his car by 3 officers. Television anchors called for calm, but calm had died days ago. The crackdown turned fury into defiance. Crowds returned, louder than before. "We built this country," they roared through Westminster. Drone footage showed police lines collapsing near Trafalgar Square as tear gas filled the air. The government called it restoring order. The people called it a war on truth. By nightfall, smoke hung over Parliament, and Britain learned what happens when a government silences those it swore to serve. Inside the chamber, chaos reigned. During an emergency session, MPs shouted across the aisle, "Where is the Prime Minister?" The Speaker's gavel splintered against the desk. Starmer entered under police escort, pale, surrounded, shaken. Opposition benches erupted. "Resign! Resign!" One MP held the Westbridge ledger high for all to see. "Broadcast live to the nation." In the gallery, veterans stood in silence. One raised his prosthetic leg in protest. The room froze. Then came the motion. A vote of no confidence. Within hours, cabinet ministers began to resign. 5 in a single day. Markets crashed overnight. Downing Street curtains stayed closed. The nation wasn't watching politics anymore. It was watching implosion. Across the country, crowds gathered again, not for anger, but remembrance. Pensioners laid flowers on Union Jacks outside empty homes. Even opposition leaders paused their speeches. This was no longer about parties. It was about conscience. Reporters called it the moment of silence. For 67 seconds, the crowd stood still. Then one voice whispered, "For Britain," and the chant began again, softer, united, unstoppable. While Downing Street hid behind curtains, the Crown stood in daylight. And for millions, that was enough to remember what they were fighting for. Tonight. This story isn't about one man's fall. It's about a nation waking up. From Falklands veterans to pensioners in the cold, the message is the same. Enough. The £2.4 billion scandal may end one career, but it has rewritten British history, because once a country sees the truth, it cannot unsee it. The protests aren't dying, they're multiplying, city to city, street to street, voice to voice. This isn't collapse anymore, it's correction. And as the smoke clears over Westminster, one line remains on every banner. We are Britain, and we remember. If you still believe truth matters, subscribe, stay with Brit News, and never look away, because the next chapter starts now.